Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Kulona, and this is Nashville. For many of you listening, I'm sure you're familiar with hits that include Broken Lady, All the Gold in California, Houston means One Day I'm Closer to You, She Used to Be Somebody's Baby, and Nighttime Magic. Those are only some of the songs recorded by the Gatlin brothers. They offered a smooth and slick evolution of country music in their era, infused with gospel-inflected harmonies and lyrics by the lead brother, Larry Gatlin. His first major hit was with the composition Broken Lady, which reached number 5 on the Hot Country Songs chart in 1976 and won him a Grammy Award for Best Country Song. He's a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame and now is a guest on This Is Nashville. It's an honor to have him here. I'd like to welcome Larry Gatlin to the show. Larry, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Now, truth in advertising, sometimes we just make mistakes.
That's right.
And you got some bad info, so let me help you.
Okay.
Most that's true. My brothers and I are not in the Country Music Hall of Fame. We're in the Texas Country Music Hall of Fame. I'm in the Texas Heritage Songwriters Hall of Fame. I'm in the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. But as yet, we have not broken whatever ceiling that is to be in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Everybody tells us that's going to happen. And here's what I do. I tell people when they say, well, you ought to be in there, this or that. When I found out I was going to be inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, and it went out on the, all the internet and all that, my phone blew up. Larry, it's about time. Mm-hmm. And the show was going to be October 14th. And I told him, I said, well, if you were just going to have one bowl of Bluebell ice cream the rest of your life, would you want it 10 years ago or would you want it October 14th? So someday I believe our body of work stands the test of time. And I believe that someday that will happen. I hope so, for my brother's sake and for the fans and for me. So we're just grateful. We're very grateful. We were in our old first hometown, Abilene, Texas, and did a concert exactly 70 years to the day that we first started our little career. We won a little talent show in Abilene, gave us a little trophy from the Cavalcade of Talent, and we got to go back home to our old first hometown and do that. We've been doing it 70 years professionally, and I kind of like, not a challenge, but I kind of issue a what if. What if you're out there in Radio Land and you have a group, a trio or more that's been doing this professionally for 70 years? Send us a tape, and if you're any good, we'll get you on the Grand Ole Opry. How's that?
That's right.
So, Broken Lady went to number 1. Here's how, because I've got it in my office. The way things used to be, if you got a number 1 record on Cashbox, Billboard, or Record World, or R&R, Radio and Records, everybody claimed that as a number 1 record. And as of day before yesterday, first one in 30 years, the Gatlin brothers have a song that Bill Gaither and I wrote called There's a Hole in the Heart of America That Only God Can Fill. And it went to number 1 on the Positive Country Gospel charts. Buddy, that's another one right there.
Number 1
So,
hit.
But that's the long story. The short story is that my brothers, we are each other's best friend. We have had a wonderful life for ourselves and for our families. And we get letters and cards and emails all the time that the music has made a difference in people's lives. So what, the man who loves his job is always on vacation.
That's right.
So we've been on vacation for 70 years.
70 years. It's something it's hard for people to kind of put into a logic-based perspective. What is it like? What did it feel like to go back to the very first place you ever performed with your brothers in Abilene, Texas, 70 years later, having this long career, having families, I'm sure you got grandkids right now, How did it feel to be back in that place where it started?
It was very humbling. It brought back great memories. We went to the old house, the old neighborhood. Stephen really don't remember a lot because literally, like I say, it was March 8th, 1955. So Rudy was born in August, so Mama called him, said he was 2. Well, he was 2.5. He was going to be 3 in August. Steve was going to be 5 in April, just 3 weeks later. And I was actually 7. So Mama fudged a little bit. We were 2.5, 5.5, and 7.5. But they had got pictures of it. We still have pictures standing there doing that. We did the Grand Ole Opry a couple of weeks ago, and my 3 little grandsons, our son Josh and our daughter-in-law Tracy's 3 boys, they're very close to the same stair step in ages.
Okay.
And they showed the picture up on the back of the Opry, the screen, of when we did all the gold. And after we did it, they had put 3 little microphones out there. And I said, we got 3 more singers back there that I think really like that song. Do we have anybody out? And they walked out. Their mother, Tracy, had suits, little black pants and pink shirts with black fringe on it. Just exactly looked like what we did that. And I'm telling you, that place went up. And they sing it. 2 of them can sing harmony. The little one, he'll sing something. He'll go, Papa, all the gold. I said, is that harmony? I said, yeah, kind of. It's harmony in some key. Sweet boys. It's just, it was a humbling experience. It brought back a lot of wonderful memories. I wrote a song, first time I fell in love with a little girl named Jane. She had a brother named Dick and a sister named Sally, a dog named Spot and a cat named Tim. Teddy bear named Puff. Because of them, my life never been the same. If it weren't for fun with Dick and Jane, with Dick and Jane, I wouldn't be in the Songwriter Hall of Fame. First time I fell in love with a little girl named Jane. That was our textbook, the first Fun with Dick and Jane. That hundreds of millions, probably, of kids. I fell in love with books. I fell in love with words. I fell in love with stories. And had great teachers there in Abilene, later on in Odessa, and at the University of Houston, an avid reader. And I was going to mention a while ago, Mickey Newberry, the late, great Mickey Newberry, one of my songwriting heroes, he stole a line. See, songwriters will borrow stuff.
Okay.
We call it borrowing.
All right.
He borrowed a line from Dr. Einstein, who said one time, God made time to keep everything from happening at once. So as it pertains to the Hall of Fame or a #1 record or anything, it happens in God's time, and if it doesn't, it wasn't meant to be.
So talk to me about what it's like being on stage with your brothers while you are performing. Because, you talk to people who've been doing things together for a long time, particularly like we see it a lot in sports. Like, they've got this chemistry. They know how to work together. Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, they've done it. They don't have to look at each other. I'm sure there is some sort of artistic, spiritual telepathy going on between the 3 of you while you're all singing.
You said the word, spiritual. We're, one time my dear friend Bill Gaither, the great Hall of Fame gospel songwriter, he called me and said, Larry, how you doing? I said, well, Bill, I'm a greatly blessed, highly favored, and perfect but forgiven child of God. He said, well, we've got to write that. I said, well, that's why I told it to the gospel songwriter of the century. I didn't find some guy on the street. And we wrote the song, Greatly Blessed. And that's how we feel every night. We're each other's best friend, and we believe that it's a calling of God. And I'm not one of those that tries to drag people down to the altar and pray them through. That's not my calling. My calling is to sing the songs that God gave us with my brothers, sing them in tune, go out there clean and sober and straight and do your job, and don't ever phone it in. I wrote a song about my dear friend, the late, great Joe Bonzel, tenor singer for the Oak Ridge Boys. I miss Joe every day. Dwayne Allen's one of my oldest friends, and William Lee and Richard, of course. And it said, talking about Joe, it says he didn't get to do it. He went to heaven. He's singing for Jesus now, around the throne of God. But I said, he did his share of driving, loading and unloading. When there was work to be done, never once did he run and hide. I'm singing flat tonight. Sang every song from his heart, never once phoned in his part. He was not just along for the ride. My old friend Joe's not just along for the ride. We're not along for the ride. We don't phone it in. If you're going to phone it in, go phone in that you're quitting. You know, the people deserve better than you. You think about it. People save for months sometimes.
Yeah.
And we come from very humble stock, you know. First generation of either side of our family to get to attend college. I wrote a song that said, I'm just one generation out of an outhouse, behind a little white house, where blue jeans, red beans, collard greens, peanut butter and jelly, and Jesus and the King James Version of the Bible made a home. Wasn't much of a house, but it was home. Our mother was born in a house with an outhouse at back, a little 3-room house with dirt floors. From the outhouse to the White House. What do I have to complain about? The answer is nothing.
How did your parents introduce music to you and your brothers?
Well, our grandfather was a great singer. He could hit a high B flat the day he passed away at 86. Working man, worked in the oil field up around Wichita Falls, Texas, a little town called Olney, for Harry Sinclair, for Sinclair Oil Company. He saved enough money out of that very meager, and they had 12 kids, so meager, it's, you know, sometimes had to put a little water in that gravy, you know what I'm saying? And he saved enough money to get piano lessons for my mother, for our mother. And she was, learned to play, and he sang those old gospel songs, from the church hymn books and from what they call Stamps Baxter, an old publishing company, those songbooks. And our Uncle James learned to play also, and over the years, Mother and Uncle James played piano for her. And we didn't know anything else. We didn't know it. It was as natural as getting up, eating breakfast, going to school. It never was like it's a big deal. People ask me, "Do you get nervous?" I said, "To go sing? I've never been nervous in my life. Maybe." Well, I tell young people who say, "Well, I'm so nervous." I said, "No, you're not. You're excited. Nervous means you're going to screw up. You're not going to screw up. Get out there and give it to them." Every now and then somebody has a sore throat, or they have
we're human.
Human sinus infection. But you learn to kind of sing it around it a little bit. And if I can't earn the money that they're going, I'll cancel the date, or we'll call our little sister, who's probably the best Gatlin singer of all, have her come sing my part, and I'll kind of sit there on the stool, ooh-ah, and we're not going to. Barbra Streisand, one of my favorite female vocalists of all time, she recorded one of my songs, as a matter of fact. She has a song called "Have I Stayed Too Long at the Fair?" Good Lord. And I wrote one that I hope I'm going to sing for my friend Garth Brooks one of these days.
Okay.
It says, "Dear God, I'd rather quit 10 years too early than 10 minutes too late. Ain't about to leave my leaving in the fickle hands of fate. I gave my soul to you, sweet boy Jesus, so God, I know my soul is safe and sound, safe and sound. But dear God, you're gonna have to tell my heart when it's time to lay it down." I'm not gonna go out there and make a fool of myself and not earn those people's money. We're not gonna do it.
After 70 years, that is the ethic that I feel has carried you throughout the length of your career. And you mentioned Barbra Streisand covering your songs. So many great performers in different genres of music have covered your songs. Even a lot of people outside of country music. So Let's talk about this. Outside of country music, what genre do you most enjoy hearing your songs interpreted through?
Well, I tell people we're gospel singers who got a really great break in country music. Now, that does not mean to diminish at all the way we feel about it. Our mama was a very wise woman, very wise woman. My baby brother Rudy came up to her once, just little old kids, and he said, "Mama, do you love me as much as you love Larry?" She said, "Rudy, I love you as much. I just hadn't loved you as long." That's mystical.
Yeah.
That's otherworldly. Because, sometimes firstborn, in the Bible, the firstborns are treated great. The rest of them just kind of had to tag along and do all the work.
Yeah.
Now, Lord, I ain't telling you did it wrong, but it's kind of weird in there sometimes. So being blessed that country music, Dottie West brought me here. I auditioned for the Imperials, another one of my favorite gospel groups. They were working with Elvis in Vegas. I didn't get the job, but like I said, it worked out great. Dottie said, "You look enough like Mickey Newberry. You got to be able to write a song." I went back to Houston. Janice, I wrote 8 songs, sent them to Dottie, and she sent me a plane ticket. And 5 years later, won a Grammy for Song of the Year for Broken Lady. That, again, I use the word mystical. That's a God thing.
Yeah.
Lil, that you can't plan that deal.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. It's, and I don't know why other people's lives, I hadn't had a whole lot of trouble in my life. Had vocal cord problems, had 4 vocal cord surgeries, can still hit the notes. And I'm going to say this as humbly and gratefully as I can. I don't know what percentage of perfect I'm willing to accept. I don't know. Maybe 90. Because when we did it last week at the Grand Ole Opry and on our 70th anniversary in Abilene, it was perfect. Mm-hmm. To God be the glory. The good book says, God forbid that I glory except in the cross of Jesus Christ. We don't take the glory. We give God the glory, but we have to take the credit.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, they roll
the credits.
Credits.
Yeah.
That means if the movie was a stinkerooski, the light man's name on it, the sound man, the grip, best boy, wardrobe, their name is on it. So maybe 90, maybe we could lower some things a little bit.
Mm-hmm. We tend to live in a perfectionist-driven society these days.
We do, to a certain extent. And then sometimes we live in, as it has probably, and I'm not picking a fight with you.
No.
But I'm right and you're wrong. Yes, we do. Strive for that which is perfect. Sports, fashion, TV, all that.
Music?
Music. The way we mix records now is different.
Yes,
you and I were talking about we still love albums, the old vinyl. But there's also a part of the society that the old saying we have in Texas that, that old boy wouldn't hit a lick at a snake. He wouldn't even protect himself. He's so lazy or whatever.
Yeah, we have that too.
Young man, I'm going to tell you something. I've never told this, but you're a good spirit. You're a good soul. And I'm going to tell you what happened. I told somebody, I read an article when I lived in New York in Trump Tower. Janice and I were there. I was doing a musical about Will Rogers, the Will Rogers Follies. And I read the newspaper every day because I'd take things out and use them on stage because Will Rogers always said, well, all I know is what I read in the paper. Mm-hmm. So I'd try to make it current. And I don't know why I thought, but you and I are safe with each other.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you call me sir again, there's going to be some.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's the way you were raised, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Me too. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about a pyramid of people. From the mother and father, 8 or 10 children, bunch of and that great pyramid of people, it was talking about, it was $1.8 million that they were receiving in aid of unemployment, child support aid of one time, of one kind or another. I told that to a friend of mine, a white dude, and he said, man, you better, I said, there's 1.8 million in that pyramid of over 100 people. He said, man, you better not tell that story. He said, people are going to think you're a racist. I said, you think so? He said, because it was down south. Mm-hmm. It was down south, Alabama or somewhere. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, they were white people.
Yeah, I was about to say, hold on a second. Why would one assume that they were black folks?
That's right.
Yeah.
But that's where we get caught. That's horse hockey. Mm-hmm. All God's children, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious. But I did it, and I've never told that story except to him, for that thing is, man, cut everybody some slack for heaven's sake. We're all God's kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy cow.
We need all of us need a break every once in a while.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, let's take a break and come back.
No, I want to keep going. I'm hot. I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll. We're going to come back. 60 seconds. We're going to keep it going.
All right, brother.
All right, y'all. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with the country music legend, Larry Gatlin. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Is in a bank in the middle of Beverly Hills in somebody else's name. So if you're dreaming about California, it don't matter at all where you've played before. California's a brand new game.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com. Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Colonna, and this is Nashville. My guest is Larry Gatlin, one-third of the famous Gatlin brothers and a member of the Country Music Songwriters
Yes.
Hall of Fame.
Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, right?
Yes. Larry,
And,
thank you for being here.
Well, I appreciate it. I feel like I got a new brother here.
Yes, we do.
The soul is connected at the soul,
That's right. That's right. I want to ask you a little bit about Nashville and what it was like.
I don't know. I don't get it.
Oh, man. Look, it's changed a lot. Like you came into town, you rode into town in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
What was this town like when you first got here?
Well, for us, for Janice and me, it was like El Dorado. You know, it was the first night I was in town. We pulled in. We had a Hertz rent truck full of our meager furnishings. We'd only been married 2 years. Pulling our little Mercury Capri sports car. Pulled into Dottie West's house at about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And Dottie was cooking breakfast. She was a night person. She was cooking her some scrambled eggs. She just got up. She said, "Oh, we're going to Mickey's boat tonight. Let's go." Janice said, "I'm going to bed." She said, "Well, come on, Larry." She took me to, excuse me, at that time, Hank Cochran and Jeannie Seeley were married, two great Hall of Fame songwriters. And we went in their boat over across Old Hickory Lake to Mickey Newberry's, lived in a houseboat there. And we had Jack Green, great singer with us, Red Lane, another incredible songwriter, one of my heroes. And Dottie had told Mickey, said, "Mickey, there's this kid from Texas who's going to be a great songwriter. He's already written some really great songs." He sent them to me. Said, "Y'all could be twin brothers." Well, we waited about noon. Newberry finally shows up. He comes up there with a cup of coffee, a cigarette in his mouth, and a guitar slung over his shoulder. He got up in the boat and he said, "Damn, kid, you do look like me." And he said, "All right, let me sing y'all something I wrote last night, or that I put together." He didn't say wrote, something I put together last night. And he sang the American Trilogy for the first time anybody'd ever heard it. You know, that was on his album. And, of course, that Elvis used to close on. You know, one of the greatest, excuse me, musical anthologies of the North, of the South, of the slaves. Incredible. We became friends. He was also a book person. And different people come at it from different, you know, Harlan Howard didn't have a college education, I don't think. His college was working on the assembly line in Detroit. That's where he got his stories and that pathos and, you know, what he had. So, and I don't even remember the end of this story, but the punchline, it doesn't have a punchline except that I'm grateful that I hung around. Oh, Nashville. We'd get together and have guitar pulls, and we still do, you know, occasionally. Here's the thing. Most old fogies like me, maybe not most, but a lot, they sit around and, well, I'll tell you one thing, by God, that ain't the way we done it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a root canal?
Oh, yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
When was that?
About 12 years ago.
How would you like to have it the way they did them 50 years ago?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay, then let's stop
Don't
talking
sign me up
about
for that.
I wrote a song called Johnny Cash is Dead and His House Burned Down. John, my son is Joshua Cash, and then his son is Cash Caldwell Gatlin. And without John and June, I'd probably be a really crappy lawyer in Houston. I'd probably have to move back or something. But they championed my cause. And it's got a line in there that says, I got nothing against the young country stars, but I could use more fiddles and steel guitars. But Johnny Cash is dead and his house burned down. Well, I could use stuff that sounds. Here's the thing. When Roy Clark came to town, he was not the same as Roy Acuff. When Roy Orbison came to town, he wasn't the same as Roy Acuff. When the Gatlin brothers came to town, they weren't the same as the Statler brothers or the Jordanaires or the Maddox brothers in Rose or people like that. Things change. I've never had a root canal. I don't want to have a root canal. If I do, I want to do it the way they do now and not like they did when my mother had to have them back in Abilene, Texas, 70-something years ago. My friend Dwayne Allen. Okay.
Yeah.
Dwayne Allen and I have known each other since I was 14 and he was 19. He was singing lead for a little gospel group called the Southern Airs, and I was singing, the Gatlin family, the quartet. Our sister was with us at that time. Now, remember, we're still the original members. That's what my deal was a while ago about that 70 years. But Dwayne and I went out at the intermission of the show that afternoon, and there's no pecan tree out there. We got some rocks and started busting pecans and eating pecans. Became friends. We've talked about it on numerous occasions. Except for my brothers and sister, I've known Dwayne Allen longer than any human being on earth, except maybe their merchandise man, my old friend Mike Campbell from Odessa, Texas. We started talking about our dreams. He wanted to someday, when James Blackwood retired from he wanted to sing lead for the Blackwood Brothers. And I wanted to sing lead with the Statesman Quartet. And, stay with my brothers. But those were our heroes. Well, Dwayne Allen told me something one time. Like I say, he's a dear friend. Just couldn't have a better friend. He told me something because somebody had written an article in one of the country music magazines. And people like to stir up a little crapola,
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
That's good. I do too.
Yeah.
Stir up a little crap, then you can fix it. So somebody in Billboard record, one of them, a paper, whatever, tried to talk about the competition between the Gatlin brothers and the Oak Ridge Boys. And it was always, we have done hundreds of shows with our buddies. And you know how you did it? If you had the hot record right then, you'd close the show, and the other ones would open the show. And if you had to, we knew.
Switch back and forth.
And we never considered it opening and closing. We said it was a co-headline bill. But I didn't want Dwayne to think that I had said something amiss when somebody was talking about this competitive thing. I said, Dwayne, that's not true. I love you and I love the Oak. He said, Larry, let me tell you something. It was mystical. I've used that word 3 times. He said, if you root for everybody, he said, that means that every Monday morning when Billboard comes out, one of your friends will have the #1 record if you're cheering for them and rooting for them. Somebody you're rooting for will have the #1 record.
Was that essence of what Dwayne said, root for everybody, champion and cheer on everybody, despite what the publications are trying to stir up, controversy? Look, they need to sell copies, so
we know the deal. If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Was that the essence of Nashville at the time when you got here and developed your career? Was it a collaborative, cooperative, fully supportive environment for most folks in the game?
For the most part. For the most part. You have maybe 70%. And there's no way to quantify that. What is that song? I believe most folks are good. Was that somebody look up that song? One of the famous. And I want to believe that. I believe most folks are good. You got football players who are good guys, and some of them are just horses' butts. In every field.
You're talking about the Luke Bryan song.
Yeah, Luke Bryan. I believe, I think.
That's how I feel. Most folks are good.
Are good.
Yeah.
So for me to sit here and say, well, by golly, it was a lot better. But I'm not going to say that. That's not true. I've met some of these young people in this town who come on the Opry, Lainey Wilson, people like that, Lorna Lane, the new War and Treaty, man, came out there. They come out there and rocked that place, the Opry, and it's different. The music is different. I doubt, and this is quantifiable. I think I've used that word twice today.
A couple times.
Boy, yeah. I'm really...
You're on the roll.
I'm on my roll. I'm on my game. I believe this is quantifiable. A few years ago, they did what they call the Nashville mashup. Do you know about that?
No.
Somebody took about 20 songs, the top 20 songs in one of the charts that day, and they picked them out, and out of that 20, they picked 12 or 15, some number, and they took one line from each one and put it together, spliced it together into a song.
Okay. They
were all in the same key. They all had that same, that snap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all harmony. Just that run on, da-da-da. And they made a song out of it, and nobody knew. I mean, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's all right. I don't think you could have done that in 1971 or 72 or 73. It has become kind of a top-down, the record companies own everything. It's called a 360 deal.
Yeah.
If they give you a record deal, then they make your records, they get part of your publishing, they get part of your T-shirts, they get part of the production. And that's fine if that's where it's come to. Man, I wish somebody would give the Gatlin, Larry and Stephen Rooney, the Gatlin a 360 deal and put us on their record label. We've got a very nice little record label, Joe Kelly and the folks at CDX, and we had did I tell you about our first #1 record?
No.
In a while. Bill Gaither and I wrote that song. I think I was going there a while ago, and Bill and I wrote a song called There's a Hole in the Heart of America that only God can fill. And it went to #1 in the positive country charts. And I don't really know, but it's kind of a country gospel type thing.
Yeah.
So if you root for everybody, some of your friends will have it. What kind of guy would I be? What would you think about me if I came in here and said, well, that old boy can't sing, they don't do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
What if she can't sing, she's flat,
People say a little bit bittered.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
I understand.
Man, it's not good.
I do want to take one more break before we have a conversation, because on the other side of the break, I do want to talk a little bit more about the music business and how making records and writing songs is different a little bit from the era that you came up in.
Okay, I'll be thinking about it. I'll be thinking about it and make something up real good for you.
All right. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with legendary singer Larry Gatlin and learn more about Nashville, the music industry, and what's on his heart these days. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Well, Johnny Cash is dead and his house burned down, down, down. There's a whole lot of weeping and wailing in Nashville town, Nashville town. Well, the man in black...
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Nobody Trashes Tennessee, the state of Tennessee's official litter prevention campaign, managed by TDOT. Details on how to be part of the solution to end littering at nobodytrashestennessee.com.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. My guest is legendary singer Larry Gatlin, part of the Gatlin brothers. An absolute legend. I'm having a blast talking to him. Larry, thank you for being here.
Thank you. You're wonderful. You've done this before.
A couple times, couple hundred times. Okay,
Great.
So, we were talking about, the fact that you appreciate how the genre and how music has really transformed and evolved these days. No, it's not what you did in your era, but you're not going to bemoan how young people and new artists are doing it now. I was listening to a couple things before our interview and heard that, you were a part of teaching kids. You did a master class on songwriting with students, people who were songwriters. And you said, they were like, I wanted to be a songwriter. And you said something interesting that stood out to me. You said, you already are songwriters. What you need to be are songs craftsmen.
What you did, you softened that up real nice. First of all, I've done them from Liverpool literally, at the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. That's where John Lennon and Paul McCartney went to high school. And they bought it and gave it to School for the Arts, you know. And I've done it at UCLA and all in between. Did one a couple of years ago at the University of Texas, the Permian Basin in Odessa, our second hometown. And here's what I tell them. I say, you want to be songwriters? They go, yeah. I said, you already are songwriters. You're just not song craftsmen or song craftspersons or song craftswomen. There's only one song craftsman in here. That's me. So listen to Papa.
Hey. Okay, so what did Papa tell them about crafting a song?
If you want to write, read. Read everything. William Faulkner said it's like being a carpenter's apprentice. Said you need to see how the cabinets are made. You know, read. Get used to how words sound. Ernest Hemingway, they asked him how he wrote. He said, I sit down every morning and try to write one true sentence. I sit down at my typewriter and bleed. If you want to be a writer, you're going to have to learn to get into yourself and into other people's lives and do that. Or it's just going to be, I love you, you love me, oh, how happy we can be. Ooh. Cut to the guitar solo. I told you, if you want to write, think. Every time you say, well, I think, whatever comes after that, go write that down. Well, I think, that's where you get your songs. Well, I feel like, whatever comes after I feel, go write that down. Feelings are facts. Somebody tells you, well, you shouldn't feel that way.
Wow.
Punch them in the nose. They're not your friend, or they're stupid. Feelings are facts. You have a right to feel how you want to. Nobody can tell you about that. If you want to write, listen. Listen to yourself. Listen to the leaves. Listen to dogs barking. Listen to cab drivers. Listen to your mama and your daddy. And really, listen to your wife.
I mean, that's really good wisdom and advice. I just feel like for young people these days, younger folks, social media and technology is ruining things. And I feel it's hard for certain young artists to truly say what's on their mind for fear of backlash, for them being absolutely vulnerable and true and saying what is true to them. And to put that into song even will create a potentially more backlash for them. Well, how do you advise them to face those fears and in a way, not in spite of how society and people may receive what they're sharing, but just in a way to almost ignore that so they can be authentically true to themselves?
Well, here's the simple fact is, and I'm not getting political, facts are still facts. I mean, something that is incontrovertible. Over 50% of 8th graders cannot read at 8th grade level. That is abominable. For our country, Democrats, Republicans, independents, whites, blacks, Christians, Jews, Muslims, whatever, to have allowed that to happen. See, I come from a family of teachers. Our mother was a teacher. My wife was a teacher. Steve was a teacher. His wife was a teacher. Oh, don't get me started. Well, and the second thing is, man, like I say, I'm a voracious reader. Our house looks like, our bedroom looks like a library that just has a bed in it and a TV.
Okay.
And downstairs, floor to ceiling bookcases, 14, 15 foot ceilings full of books. And even with that, I know where, one volume, the Harvard 5-foot bookshelf. The president of Harvard, Charles Wilson, many years ago said, everything you need to read, you can put in every book you need to read, you can put in a 5-foot bookshelf. The famous Harvard 5-foot bookshelf. I haven't read all of them, but if I need to go get something from Shakespeare or Milton, or I need to go get something from Oscar Wilde or from Virginia Woolf, anybody, I can go get it there. But having said that, when I see something on TV, when I think of something I need, what comes to my mind that I want to look up, Google is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
For that. And I think you can believe that about 90% of the time, especially about literature, you know? So Google, I do not do Facebook, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, none of that. I don't know how to do that. If I want to do that, I have to go get my one of our granddaughters to show Papa how to do that. I don't read what people, and Janice does it. Most of the things she does, funny things. People, they got those things where guys out on the porch and his wife opens the door and scares him, stuff like that. That prank. I told her, I said, don't ever do that to me. She knows not to do that to me because I'm jumpy anyway. Kids today have at their fingertips the Library of Congress, the great library at Alexandria. They have at their fingertips the entire world, and they're sitting there, and I'm lumping them all into it, and I shouldn't.
But I hear what you're saying, but that's also kind of scary. If you have the fingertips at the entire world, which means you could potentially have the attention of the entire world. So if you're a young creative songwriter who may be sharing something because they said they took your advice, I feel they wrote these down and they crafted a song. And they're like, whoa, looking at these lyrics, looking at what it said, how are people going to react?
Oh, I forgot to finish that.
Yes, sir.
Because it was a great question. A friend of mine, a fellow named Jack Boland, was a Unity minister up in Detroit, and it was one of my sponsors in AA. I've been clean and sober for 44 years by the grace of God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Jack told me one time, he said, and he always called me Larry Gatlin. He didn't just say Larry, he said, Larry Gatlin, because we were talking about some heavy things. I was, about that very thing, people who didn't like the music or wrote a bad review or something. He said, Larry Gatlin, it's going to be a wonderful day in your life when you realize that you no longer have to defend yourself. In other words, stop being so defensive. The good book says, fear not. See, fear not is not a suggestion. It's a commandment.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Okay, dig. Okay, hey, Chris, you really think we're going to make it across here in these 3 little boats? They're leaking already. There ain't nothing out there. It's flat. We're going to go off the end of it. You really think we ought to go? Man, I'm afraid. Oh, come on, guys, let's go. We're going to go discover America. Fear is paralyzing. There are natural fears of a tiger, and believe me, I get it. Different people. I told you I'd never been nervous going on stage,
Yeah.
That you get excited. Well, you get a little more excited when you hear the
good old Tonight Show theme.
Here's John.
That's right.
You get a little more excited than normal. I understand that different people, their psyche, the way they were raised, whatever. I'm not belittling that at all, but just on a general sense, and for a creative person, okay, you can write it and hide it, I guess. And got another song. I can't lie to my pencil. I've tried. I can't lie to my pencil. Women keep diaries, men keep journals, whatever that differentiation is. But I think most people who would tell you that their life is more well-rounded, happier, whatever, if they read books and write down stuff.
I want to play a little bit of one of the songs that you did with your brothers. This is called Broken Lady.
She's a broken lady, waiting to be mended, like a potter would mend a broken vase. A broken lady, waiting to be mended, and have what's left of the pieces put back in place. Her love was like a fortress around man. She would have died for taking care, to take care of all he needed. But the lady's fortress slowly turned into a prison, and the warning signs he gave, she never heeded. She vowed every morning that what God joined together, no one else in the world could apart. Then the walls came tumbling to the ground. Her world came crashing down around her heart, her heart. Now she's broke.
That's a beautiful song.
Thank you.
And it's really deep. What was going on when that was being developed?
We had 3 or 4 top 20, maybe top 10 records, but we hadn't had a number 1 yet. And I was up at a CBS Records. Columbia used to put us on record promotion tours. Michael Martin Murphy went on a bunch of them, and a guy named Johnny Duncan, Janie Fricky, different people who were on Columbia. They'd take 6 or 8 of us, and they'd go up to the Midwest and do 3 or 4 little days at radio stations, have all the stations come. So we had done one up somewhere outside of Chicago. On the way back in the cab to O'Hare, I was going to take a late flight to Dallas for some gigs. And I sat in the back of that cab and I said, man, what do you need? You need a number 1 record. What do you need? What do you do? And like I say, that at that time, our sister LaDonna was with us. And now Rudy sings her part. We lowered it 1/2 a step, and we can still sing. I said, what do you need? What do you do better? What is your trademark? I said, harmony. I said, nobody really pays to hear the guitar intro. Maybe Stairway to Heaven. Or
Yeah.
Or El Paso, Grady Martin. I said, what do? You do harmony. You do harmony. I sat back in that cab and I went, she's a broken lady. And it all came. Mm. And because I know how to start an idea and continue it and flesh it out. John Rich asked me one time how I wrote songs. He said, you're crazy. We were writing songs. He said, how did you come up with that thing over what we were doing? He said, what are you thinking about? I said, you're not going to believe it, but when I get an idea, a general idea, I try to write 1 syllable at a time. And he said, I don't believe you. I said, okay, And he said, well, and everybody doesn't do it that way, but I want broken weight, like a potter would mend a broken vase and have all the pieces put back. No, and have what's left. Because some of the pieces are shattered beyond fixing.
Yeah.
And walking down to the ground, her world came crashing down around her. I want the melody to match the lyric, what's going on. When you don't often hear my name mentioned with Beethoven in the same interview. When Beethoven realized that he was almost totally deaf, and he was going through a horrible period in his life. Horrible. Demons. What did he write? Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. The 5th Symphony. One of his 2 really great masterpieces. The other one being the 9th Symphony. When he figured out, got a little more sane, figured out that he could still write music even though he couldn't hear it, he wrote, Freude, schöne Götter, Funken, Tod. He wrote the choral symphony. I mean, he used Schiller's Ode to Joy poem. I'm really getting into the muck and mire of all this, but I love this stuff.
I love it too.
But that's what the melody is supposed to, if it's a sad thing, man, put minor chords are sad, at least, I wrote a song the other day, said, the bad news is there ain't no heaven. The good news is there ain't no hell. Don't know if there's any such thing as time. Reckon only time will tell. You better not spend your time worrying about the ringing of the bell. Well, I don't think that, but I'm going to write a story about an old man sitting, spitting, and whittling in front of the hardware store. This kid walks up to him and asks for some advice, or they just start talking. It's crazy stuff like that. I'm nuts.
It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to sit and talk with you, sir, and to just absorb some of the wisdom
I didn't talk too much?
No, not at all. It was absolutely
Well,
perfect.
You are wonderful. You have an insight and a good soul and a good heart. I enjoy it. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again very soon.
All right, pal.
Thank
God
you,
bless.
sir. Thank you, sir. Larry Gatlin is in the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. He's a member of the Gatlin Brothers, and he's a true Nashville and country music legend. Again, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini and Tasha A.F. Lemley. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation doesn't end here. Comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. You can also find us on the socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, and X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Kaliole Colonna. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. And to be good to each other.
Let us stand on the rock of the ages. Let us shine.